could wait for other people to dial in. Is there like any directions you have for
5
us?
minutes.
Well, I just started. Oh, I see what you just did. Boom. Well, our friend Dan is not here yet. Hopefully he will be soon. But let's get going and talk about this world. I'm Margaret Carlton, and I put together this show, Desperate Times, Creative Measures. There we go.
Hey, there's Dan.
Wait, I haven't. Oops.
Dan!
I have the worst lighting out of everybody. Jacques!
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm just checking.
Yeah.
Roma's trying to help you. Come on.
Where's Roma? Hi, Roma.
Hey.
Hi.
You're the magic that makes this all work.
I'm the magic.
It's so true.
True.
I can't
So
get up
true.
in the morning. I'm like, Ro, I need you to sprinkle some pixie dust on me. And then I
No.
just float. I
No.
float.
Mhm.
I read those books to you.
Okay.
Well, one of the two of us has to go to a virtual college fair.
All
Doesn't
right,
that
it's
sound
time to
like fun?
go.
All right.
It's not me.
Sorry for all the different.
Speaker is on, you know. Anyways, just trying to bring some levity to the situation. That's it.
So, welcome everyone. The four of you are a major part of this show, Desperate Times Creative Measures, that is on display for 2 more days in downtown Providence. And I just thought we could have a nice conversation about art and our times and how we get through this. So I thought it would be great if everybody could introduce themselves and talk a little bit about your work. Would you like to start, Jesse?
Sure. I'm Jesse Duquette. I do a daily cartoon project called The Daily Dawn. Yeah, amateur cartoonist.
Also very humble because he's got his 2nd book out right now.
True. That's true.
Is this part of the book tour?
Yeah. I guess it is.
It's all downhill from here.
This counts. This counts.
It was funny.
Yes, but if you don't know Jesse, you should check out his Instagram, Facebook, website, The Daily Dawn, for daily amazing drawings of the man in our presidential office right now. And yeah, you can see on Darian's feed that she's taking some pictures as we go along of the work. We have 27 pieces here, which Jesse was very generous to lend. And people have just been incredibly complimentary and enthusiastic about them, as I'm sure you probably know. Jacques, would you like to talk about your work?
Yeah, I'm Jacques, artist, printmaker. Grew up in a print shop. My dad was a writer and had his own print shop. So I was fortunate and didn't have to pay to go to school to learn anything about printmaking. Yeah, my work is, I really started out with texture because I like texture and layers and things like that. But then when all this stuff started happening and I just felt like something, with all this going on and protests and all that. So I turned to a teaching mechanism came on. So, that's why I started doing the prints that I have there as a teaching mechanism to let people know, we're in a different time, but what they were talking about back then is what they're talking about now, and one of my biggest things I wanted to do was, because I had an awesome mom, I wanted to highlight the women behind some of these famous names like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael. So, and I'm going to continue to do that. So that's why those prints are there and everything. So it's just a teaching mechanism, so people can know their history. Plus, I was offended one time. Kid came in, probably 35, 36 years old, and we had a workshop going on, and I was printing that first round of Fannie Lou Hamer print, and he wanted one, and I said, you can have one if you tell me who this person is. And he didn't know who Fannie Lou Hamer was, and I was shocked. And so I told him, I said, I'll tell you what, go Google who she is, read up on her, come back, I'll give you 2 prints. And he did, and I gave him 2 prints. But it was just, because a lot of people most of the kids that are growing up now don't really know much about these women because it's not taught in schools. So it's my way of highlighting those women.
Kath, do you want to talk about this project and maybe Card Carrying Liberal? Another work you did?
Sure. The work in this show is kind of a series of angry teacups where I just rage into someone's grandmother's china, basically. And it started out because I was thinking a lot about how, as we age as activists, people view us differently. And like our assumption about our grandmothers often is that like there's a lot of sweet little old lady vibes around older people. And as Jacques was just saying, like that history, we know the history means that that's not true, that there's something else going on there. And so I was interested in this kind of exterior of these sweet teacups and what women were really thinking inside. So that they often were really not allowed to say in polite society. So I wrote some of those impolite things inside the teacups and refire them. And there was another project when George Bush was running for re-election, when W was running for re-election, I started a greeting card company called Card Carrying Liberal that sold a bunch of cards. I was just kind of curious, like, what is a greeting card company? What is a company, really? Anyway, and raised money that I sent into swing states. So the teacups, the money goes to either bail people out of jail, a lot of money goes to Black women and other folks who have criminal records.
Dan Wood.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dan, and the work that's in the show there, it's kind of interesting hearing everyone's take on their own work at this point, because it really, well, first of all, thank you, Margaret, for curating and putting us all together in this room and in this group, because it's a really beautiful show. Like, and all the work is so different, but I feel like it's all filling in sort of in from a piece, and it's covering different ways. There's not a section of work that there isn't going to be some in for someone to connect to, depending on where you're coming from. So I think that's really nice. For the work that's in the show is work from the linotype occasionally. So the work I had been doing before this so for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Dan Wood and I run a letterpress print shop. That's the short version. But I was making a new print on a linotype, which is a machine that casts type as you are typing. And so at the turn of the last century, like 1900, it was taking over the newspaper business, and it was changing printing so that people had so much more access to information because you didn't have to hand typeset everything. You know, school textbooks became cheaper. You know, you could have, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 daily newspapers in a city with many, many pages. So anyways, the works that's there started, instead of doing it every day, I would just do it sort of as I was moved to it, as I could make the time, because when you're doing it every day, it's just like, I don't know, Jesse, how long you've been doing this for, like when you started, or if you'd ever done a daily art project before, but boy, it's relentless. Doing something for a year every single day that's going to take 2 to 5 hours. What was I thinking?
I think Jesse's
Good
done
luck.
it. for
Congratulations.
4
Keep
years
going. I
now.
hope it goes away soon so you can stop.
You and me both.
Exactly. But so for me at least, these posts are, it was interesting once we got into the COVID world, where before they were much more like newspaper columns. There's a lot of varieties they could take, right? But then at a certain point, where we're living now is just like, you need it, but you don't even need the long, thoughtful article. It's just a headline because you can't even take any more than that. So that's sort of where I got to.
But also with your headlines, there's a lot of sort of subversive text at the bottom,
Yeah,
which
yes,
you
yeah.
I always like to read the fine print.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, also, and I would say, like Jacques was saying too, that there is like, well, for Kath's teacup, there's something very particular and personal about like a teacup, right? And to have this sort of surprise at the end. We only have 2, so I can usually figure out by the time we're like a quarter of the way down, depending on how much milk you put in, which cup it is. So it probably should get some more. But why am I holding a teacup shape? Oh, but like Jacques was saying too, when you put something into a print, like if you're talking to a young person and there's something printed, there's this weird automatic assumption that it actually means it has some value. So there's, you know, you could take, whether you're writing in calligraphy or printing something nicely, like, you know, just by, even you're only printing like 100 copies and most people are seeing it digitally, just by having it printed, like so many people in this last year and now will be like, it's like like I'm sure, like they're telling me that, you know, these things are really helping me keep going, just because they're seeing something printed, which means it's important, and then they might feel the same way, and all of a sudden there's this kind of, hopefully it's not an echo chamber, but you know, I feel like there is something about stating the obvious that everyone is feeling, but you know, it's sort of it's a very strange thing, because sometimes you really are just stating the obvious. But to hear someone say the sky isn't falling or is falling, and it corresponds to the truth, it's kind of helpful. But I don't know.
Do you each want to talk a little bit about what prompted you to start this body of work, or engage in a few of you are more specifically dealing with our president, hopefully for not very long. But what impelled you to start on this project? Do you want to start, Jesse?
Sure. Well, it was very much, in terms of the project, totally an accident. It wasn't planned, but basically sort of these 2 things happened at the same time, where on one hand, there were, you know, all of these protests that were happening, not just across the country, but around the world in response to the election, which was a really, I think, the kind of the first glimmer of some kind of hopefulness after, between November and January. So there was this great, you know, comprehensive response that just seemed so across the board. And then there was the first press conference right after the inauguration with Sean Spicer, which to me really felt like the first official moment. It didn't have like the pomp and the pageantry of an inauguration, which still felt a little bit fantastical. Here was the presidential seal, the press secretary up there giving his first thing, and it felt real for the first time. And that was, of course, the press conference where Sean Spicer talked about how tremendous the crowds were and historic and all that. And it just struck me that it was not only like a profoundly provable lie, but it was the most unnecessary of lies. What a weird thing. And it just struck me like, wow, here we are 8 minutes in, this can only possibly get worse. And so I was sitting in my parents' kitchen at the time, and I just drew pretty straightforward. There was no real creative license with it at all, just a really straightforward caricature of Sean Spicer at the podium with a word bubble that just had the quote about, we had the greatest crowd size in history. I added a quote from George Orwell's 1984 at the bottom. And then I posted it with a caption that had a real lot of confidence with it. It said something like, I'm gonna document every day of this administration until the end, which was a total lie. I had no intention of making it past a week. But I think, first of all, there was a really surprising and fairly rapid positive reaction, which I didn't anticipate. So that, of course, made it feel like, oh, well, okay, maybe I should keep it going. But more so, and this is what I've always maintained about this project, the material is limitless. I mean, I know I don't know what the rules are on this call. I'm gonna try to keep I'm trying not to swear as much. I'm gonna try to keep that in check. But I mean, there's no other.
I was thinking 5 minutes ago and swearing a lot.
We all are potty mouthed.
Yeah, it only goes with what's going on right now and how you're feeling, how we all feel.
And then I could be your swear jar, and you could just send me money.
All right, perfect.
And don't worry, we're not going to spell check you if you do.
I mean, what other administration do you have, solicitations of drinking bleach or changing the trajectory of a hurricane with a Sharpie or porn star pass? I mean, like, it never ends. So it lends itself to cartooning. And in all honesty, most days, it doesn't take a lot of mental gymnastics to come up with the thing. I mean, it's in fact, if anything, he makes satire that much more difficult, and trying to find that tone. But so, yeah, I mean, again, it started kind of as a self-dare and as a lie, which I guess is kind of fitting for the subject matter, but I definitely wasn't anticipating it for it to go into the day 1400 maybe now. I don't even know, but yeah, it was a snowball, definitely.
So the next day, you just do another one, like you just did one the next day and then you never stopped?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, if you think, certainly in those first days, and if when I don't make it too much of a habit of looking back at the old drawings, but I know from the beginning, it was a lot more just very straight documentarian style. I wasn't really infusing a lot of caricature into it. It was pretty straightforward, and it was very serious because, I'm sure as you guys all remember, I mean, it was the Muslim ban, and it was just, the shutting down the park service, like all this stuff that just happened one after the other, and you didn't know where it was going to end, if it was going to end. So the beginning wasn't really funny, I would say. It was more just like everybody else in this sort of state of perpetual trauma. And it definitely morphed over time. There's periods of time where it's more goofy or whatever, whatever's happening is the material is just so rife for making fun of it. And then other times, definitely not. So it definitely kind of goes in waves of being humorous and not funny, I guess, at all.
Are you, is anyone feeling like this process has been therapeutic, or it's just a constant barrage of having just to deal with the daily outrages, and it just never, it's a deluge, it never stops. And so it's like drinking from a fire hose, I think. But are you finding any sort of peace with it all, or are you just still fighting? to keep above water?
I would say it's therapeutic, but I guess that is a little bit offset by the world of social media and the never-ending element of trolls and verbal abuse. So that gets a little bit punishing after a while. But so I think, and that doesn't, that's not so much of a problem, but what it is, it makes you really sad when you realize like there's a lot of people who are immovable and are just true believers. They're not dumb. They're more evil than dumb, maybe, but I mean, it's a cult, you know? So, and that's what gets a little freaky, and it's a cult on a spectrum. You have people who are all in, you know, they're you know, Branch Covidians basically, and then you have people who are just, you know, they only care enough to support him. But either way, like that's what I think, it's definitely therapeutic to have some kind of an outlet beyond just crying in your pillow. But being exposed to and amongst that element with any kind of regularity is really, it's very, for me, it's very depressing when I look at the state of you know, a not insignificant swath of the country.
What about you, Dan? How was your year of doing it every day?
Well, I would say it didn't get any easier after you were doing it for 3 months, right? And then when you're getting close to the halfway point, you're like, oh man. And then you're at the halfway point, and then every day after the halfway point, because I had a set finish, like February 1st, right? But literally, I'd say the last 6 months, you know, and then it gets worse as you get closer to them. It was more just like slowly crawling over like broken glass on the pavement. You know what I mean? Because like every single day, you just know, like, you know, plus you're trying to run a business and trying to raise a person, not for long, et cetera, et cetera. But so it did not get any easier, but, and the other side of it is I'm like a news junkie anyways, right? So you're following all the stuff because like I would want to go to bed with a couple sort of things in your head that you might be printing the next day, because you don't want to just wake up starting from scratch all the time. And so then you're just like constantly, it's constantly kind of somewhere in the back of your head trying to like sort through this stuff. The therapeuticness, I would say, is it always feels good to at least be doing something, you know, like even if that something is 25 people are seeing the something or whatever, but like it staking out some ground to say, no, this is important to note, even if you're not sure. But after the everyday, because now it's different from doing it every once in a while. So then you feel like it has to be important, and sort of screws with your psychology a little bit, right? But when it was all over, it was like 2 or 3 days where I just would like wake up in the middle of the night at like 4 in the morning and just start crying because like you've been so deep. Hey, look, there's a cute person in the back.
Oh my God. Hello, little person.
Yeah. A mobile Nike ad. Amazing. So, but anyway, so I'd say like embracing this culture enough to try to understand it for that length of time is just really exhausting. But that's part of the plan. You know, the plan is to make people exhausted. So I feel like if you can get yourself distracted enough to be making something that you feel good at any point in life, then that's a pretty, like you can feel all right about things. So that would be the therapy there.
Jacques, do you want to talk about Print Like You Give a Damn?
Print Like You Give a Damn was actually came from, I was actually angry at something, and I was angry at something, but then I taught a class, and one of the students that was in the class, you know, one of her questions was, how many colors can I use?
Hmm.
And, and the anger that I had was before she asked me that question, it was a few days before someone had said something to me and I said that word. But to answer her question, I told her, you can go as many colors as you want. We might not get it all done in this class, but you can always come back and finish what you're doing. You know what I mean? When it comes to art, it's not just black and white. You can push the boundaries, and I like pushing the boundaries.
Jacques, it looks like you have like a devil on one side and the angel on the other with those two posters behind you. It's
Yeah.
like, is it gonna print like it gives a damn, or is it not real until you print it? Which one's gonna win? I'm trying to figure it out.
Give a damn when you print it. And it was just me putting my feelings on paper, and making those words look good, but also, that meaning is out there and everything, because we give a damn, it's us that are in this show together, and the person in the White House doesn't. So, and I just feel like, with the collective that I was part of, still am, and that's one of the things we called it, print like you give a damn and everything. And it's true to me, why don't we print like we give a damn, but yeah, that's what it means to me, but it's a lot of my work and stuff used to be just about feeling a feel good message and everything. But then all of this stuff started happening. So, it's like,
Well, you guys, you ran that print shop, and that collective was out at every protest, handing out prints, just really showing up and being there. And that was really impressive.
Yeah, because that was Nafis had originally came to me with that. It started out, that whole collective just started out with just me and Nafis. Asked me, would I like to do something about what's going on and, make some prints. And the empathy prints that are there, we actually started out, my idea was, how can I make some prints? Because I have family members that are nurses and I know some doctors. So those prints started out was like, that them empathy prints are part of a series of prints that I did that went out to frontline workers, nurses and doctors and things like that at 3 different hospitals, Rhode Island Hospital, Butler and Marion. Each got 300 of each print and everything. And it was just, that feeling, again, putting that feeling on paper and everything, because to do that job that they were doing, you have to have some kind of empathy for the people that you're working with and taking care of. So that's where that came up from, but yeah, it's all about feeling for me.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say one thing, knowing your work for some time too, what's interesting about it is, of all the work that's there, like, your pieces in some ways have the sort of like teacups have a gentleness to them because it's a teacup with all these doily things. Is that the right word? Doilies?
Yeah.
God, what a weird word.
Good job.
all that stuff.
What's inside.
But then inside, yeah, but I feel like with the empathy print you're talking about, and even the ones while there's like it's interesting because there's a quiet softness to it that some of the other work has just sort of pushed aside. Like, we don't have time for this, or do you know what I'm saying? Not like that was my decision, but I feel like with the photographs, the offset prints, the offset photographs, and then the type over it, like there's something like they're just as powerful, but there's a quietness to it, which might be one of the feelings you're talking about. And with the empathy prints, it's just a bunch of color, lots of colored backgrounds, right? But it's just the sort of colored design in them with the type. And I feel like there's something, to me at least, it's kind of nice to, the variety of work in show is great, but with your work in particular, there's kind of a calm sort of step back, even if there's still the same outrage and anger and wanting to change things. But there's just like a little bit of quietness to it, which I think is really effective. Plus the process, I just like offset printing.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the button, Dan. I wish I could have taped you, or can I take you and walk you around with me sometimes?
Hey, if this is getting recorded, it might be getting recorded. You never know.
Being recorded.
With the empathy prints and all those colors, you know what I mean? There is a softness to it and everything. You know what I mean? It's like you have some beautiful colors, but they're all over the place, and there's chaos, but there's some beauty to it. You know?
You're also bringing in the history, which I don't think.
Did you say history or history?
History.
No K.
No K, just H.
Yep. No, I was confused. I'm like, history?
No,
Sorry,
but I think that
over here. No problem.
most of the other work here is super contemporary. It's like daily insults. It's really reactive, where Jacques' work just has a longer view. And it's nice to bring that history in, like the Langston Hughes quote, and it's just nice to know this has been going on forever. Like protests have happened, people have struggled, people have lived through, I don't know. I mean, people have lived through the Civil War, and people have lived through all sorts of things. And it feels so dark right now that to me is heartening. Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida Wells, people who, lived the struggle, and hopefully we can be reminded of, just the strength that has come before us. So another thing I wanted to touch on is that we're all locked in. We don't see people, humans. And I know some of you from real life, but Jesse, I've only known through the internet. And I wonder how sharing on the internet affects your work, or how it inspires you or discourages you, and what kind of responses you're getting, and whether that's something you pay a lot of attention to.
Well, I just say for me, because it started truly as a make the print, take the picture, put it on the Instagram, right? To me, it's still weird how, you could have, what have we got here? Oh, these guys, right? You could have one print, right? Which is like, 2 colors or whatever is happening, stuff about RISD. What's the bottom line? Oh, there was when he pardoned Roger Stone, right? But this particular print, right? I made, maybe 100 copies, print the red, print the black. I'm doing the print, cranking, running the press, blah, 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 blah. And some people see this actual thing and get the holder and be like, oh, that's a nice print, right? But for most people, they're only going to see it on the internet. But the weird thing is that because it's handmade, like, I don't know if this is the same, Jesse, with your drawings or what, but because it's handmade, people suddenly pay more attention to it, which is really strange. Like, this is a mass medium printing, right? But then when you take a picture of something that was used in that medium, and then all these people on the internet are going to see it, and they're going to pay a little bit more attention because it looks handmade. It's very strange. So, but I would say it was extremely useful to have that medium. As far as trolls and stuff, it wasn't so bad, but I am really good at just the first instant of something, just blocking the person, because you know, I don't need to protect their First Amendment rights to say really obnoxious, hurtful things to people, right? That's not my job. They can do it wherever they want. And so I feel like there was that, but there wasn't it wasn't like there was a lot of that. So.
Well, I think Jesse is the only one who's actually been blocked and censored. As far as I know, does anybody else have that
I
experience?
blocked Kath Connolly like 3 weeks ago and she hasn't even noticed. I'm a
I
little.
know, that's so typical of me. I mean,
I'm just like,
I got blocked by a couple people for past projects, but the teacups have not been so internety, I guess, or out there as much. But, you know, for me, this work is about connecting with people around an idea and trying to engage with them. So I do find it like that connection. I don't know if it's therapeutic, because that is like too high a bar for any kind of therapy for me. But I do find that connection really interesting. And I, you know, when I was sitting with you the other day in the gallery, Margaret, and watching there was a group of women going around and they were peeking in each cup and they were like going around and kind of laughing or smirking or reacting. Oh, come over here and see this cup. Oh, come. And I just enjoyed that idea that they were together discovering these different messages, that it was a little hidden to them. So that interaction to me is how social change happens, you know, is having some kind of exchange about an idea or something. So the internet, to me, is like an organizing platform, you know, and I watch movies there. But so in that sense, I find the internet not, you know, it's a weird echo chamber, but I find it helpful. I think the buddy painting hotel situation is was the most like vicious internet feedback I've ever gotten for anything that I've done. But like the card company and stuff, it was long conversations with people that were actually kind of interesting, even if they totally disagreed with me and hated me, like we could engage. So. But
that was kind of pre-Instagram, Facebook.
Yes, it was. Yeah, those were some vicious handwritten letters and lots of emails. That's true. It was before the social media thing.
Jesse, have you engaged with people who are upset with you?
Yeah, I try not to, but sometimes it's just really hard not to. I mean, it solves precisely nothing. It doesn't matter. But so as a rule, I try not to engage because it never goes anywhere productive. There's no point in engaging at all. But I sometimes I just can't help myself. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a bummer reality of being on social media, but again, it's such part of the territory. It's less the troll aspect and more kind of what I read into that in terms of culture at large and sort of this fashioning of a certain segment of the younger population, which is a bummer.
But you definitely have many followers, and probably, I'm assuming, a lot more positive than negative.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to make it sound like it's skewed in another direction where I'm, you know, endless onslaught of that stuff. Definitely not. It is mostly a very congenial, kind sort of thing. But you know, my relationship to that aspect of it is pretty removed. I mean, I'm for me, I'm pretty monastic about the project in terms of how I go about it, how I think about it. I don't want, you know, from the day one to drawing it last night, you know, I don't change my approach. I pay attention to the news throughout the day. And then after I read my son his bedtime stories, I'll come down and then I'll start drawing. I don't really pay attention to the feedback so much. And so while certainly the inordinate the majority of the feedback that comes through is definitely really kind and positive, that's all really great, it still has as much of an effect on the output of the work as the negative stuff. I mean, it's basically, all it is just a random person drawing in their sketchbook and then taking a picture of it and putting it on the internet. So there is a social contract by putting it onto social media on a public account. I'm opening up the work and myself to that kind of criticism. However, it's no different than a stranger walking by your house, knocking on your door and saying, that's a terrible color you painted your house. It's just, it doesn't matter. You know, these are people who, up until that moment, they've chosen to engage with me. It's an existence I was not aware of. So I always try to remind myself, it doesn't, you know, positive or negative, it doesn't have a demonstrable effect on the work itself, either way. And I think the danger with getting too wrapped up in, say, the positive aspect of it is that I can see how one could easily shift, especially in a genre like this of political engagement, where you're beginning to create work for the audience. You're doing things that are just like softballs, you know, and I think this is why I'm gonna come across like a real asshole, but I don't really like political cartooning. I'm not a big fan of it, but I think a lot of it's because it does feel like you already said, like there's an echo chamber, Kath said earlier, and it doesn't move me in particular, that kind of political stuff, I guess. So I think there's a danger on both sides of allowing, you know, to just want to cater to this small crowd on the positive side, or on the negative side, getting your feelings hurt by someone saying they don't like your work, and then I don't know what you would do with that, not make work anymore, or try to find the thing they like and do that. I don't know.
And Dan, you just block everyone who comes at you?
Well, no, I do now. No, it'd be more just like some dope saying something stupid. There was one person who had like a military, I don't know what their deal was, but every once in a while something would come up, and you know, maybe it's someone you know from some printing world in like Colorado that's just coming from a very different place, right? And you can sometimes have a conversation, sometimes not. But in terms of like more troll-like behavior, sometimes I wouldn't necessarily engage. Sometimes you just leave the thing there because maybe someone else is kind of curious. But then at a certain point, you're like, this is serving no purpose, and then you would just block the person. You feel, you know, but it's not like it wasn't getting like Kath's hate mail for getting rid of buddy portraits or anything like that. Oh, did I say that? So, but there it is. It's a like, you know, there was something recently where someone was being a weirdo, but angry people, you're going to waste a lot of energy sometimes. And sometimes it's not a waste of energy. You can actually have a communication. But when it comes to a lot of internet people, it's just like, you know, that person woke up this morning with some mission to just cause havoc.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, you know what, you know.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
So.
Yeah. Me personally, I've actually had a few people come to me, you know, because I used to I printed a lot of those Black Lives Matter posters, and I had someone come up to me, and I just love it when people say all lives matter, and then you know you try to give them the statistics, you know, on, you know, disproportionate number of people who are getting killed out there and everything, you know, and I'm like, you don't have to worry about that when your kids leave the house. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, you know, I have to sit my son down and literally have a talk with him you know, because he doesn't live with me, he lives on his own. So sometimes I have to call him to come over, you know, because you get angry, you get tired, and you want to have a talk with him and everything, and let him know, hey, this is what you should do. And most of the people that are saying this are not having to do that with their kids, you know. And, you know, and this person listened and paid attention, you know, and to me, you know, and she had some feedback, I had my feedback, I made my point, you know, and I think I got my point across. And when you get two people having that conversation, when you can get your point across and that person absolutely has no feedback, that means that that person understood. Because anybody that doesn't understand will never have a feedback. I mean, we'll always have something to feed back at you or throw back at you or try to, try to, like Dan said, that just woke up with an agenda that day. Hey, I'm going to tick you off because you're trying to say this and this is not true or anything like that. But when I had that conversation with her, she understood what I was talking about and got to understand it. And that's dialogue. That's real dialogue. And that's something that's needed, you know. And you can't have constructive dialogue with someone that wakes up with an agenda, like Dan says, you know, that day. It's a waste of energy. You can tell when you're gonna waste your energy right off the bat, you know. Okay, I'm not gonna have this conversation with you because nothing I tell you is gonna sway you or, you know, where you can come back at me with something constructive, something that'll make me go, you know. But yeah, I don't pay attention to people and their criticism because it's all about my feeling and the words that I put out there, how people take it in, you know, and reciprocate it, and you know, because I'm trying to, you know, again, that's the teaching mechanism, to say, hey, you know, it's okay to say this. It's okay to have that dialogue. And I think with the race issue that's going on in this world is the problem is on both sides, no one can have a constructive dialogue. You know, like with all these politicians, Democrats and Republicans, everybody on both sides are self-centered people. Each side has an agenda and something they're looking to get out of it and everything, instead of just having that dialogue and meet in the middle and how we can fix this problem. Because to me, when I see a 5-year-old, a parent brings a 5-year-old out to a white supremacist demonstration, that tells me racism is taught. You know, it's not something that most people are born with. It's taught. And that's a sad thing to see, you know, and those people you can have dialogue with. You can have that conversation. It can be constructive and hopefully something will come out of it. But, you know, like Dan said, it's a waste of energy when you would come up against someone that wakes up with that agenda and everything and just was like, I am who I am. You're not going to change that. Nothing you can do about it, you know.
So, has this presidency changed the way you think about art and engaging with people?
No, it actually, you know, it actually just kind of fueled me a bit. I had an old guy, you know, my parents always say, you know, listen to your elders, you know, and I had an old guy who used to talk to me about me being angry. And he said, yeah, you're angry, but guess what? You'll feel good when you wake up tomorrow, when you find something to do constructive with that anger and everything, you know, and you'll feel better sooner or later. But guess what? That struggle continues, you know, and this struggle is going to continue. You know, the good thing about it is people like us that do what we do, you know, that we can, you know, to be able to do what we do and invoke thought, someone's thought process and everything, to me, is what keeps me going. You know what I mean?
It's a lucky gift, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know, and that's why I do it. I don't, you know, I mean, I have too much time. When my time is not wasted on thinking and thought and everything, because if I think about everything that's going on in this world, you know, it's just gonna invoke anger and more anger and more anger and everything. And you know, to be able to let it go on paper, I think is the best way. You know, like you, Dan, you thought you were going to end in February, right? But look at you now.
I know, that's true.
It's still there.
Uh,
And and you don't have to write a whole book and then understand this. And typesetting, you know, I remember I was doing a workshop and we were doing some things on politics and stuff like that. And one of the things I told people, I said, you don't need to write a whole book. We're setting type, you know, not that I was going to stop them from just setting more type. I said, you don't need that many lines to say what you want to say to get your point across, you know, and I'm like, here, I'll give you 4 lines. Give me 4 lines of what you're feeling right now with what's going on and everything, you know. And they came up with some amazing stuff that they were feeling and everything, you know. And that's why, I mean, with the prints that I have, like with the Langston Hughes and stuff like that, you don't need a whole book, you know. And, you know, and that's how I feel about it. I mean, I just feel like, you know, we're here for a purpose, you know, and one thing I've learned is that if we all realize, and this is how I feel about life right now, that, you know, if the things we do in life can better someone else's situation, then we've done our job. But it doesn't end, because the struggle again continues. You know what I mean? Because there's gonna people that's gonna continue to struggle. There's gonna be starvation, you know. But if we just continue to do that, to look at that next person, you know, no matter what you're going through, but if you can better want someone's situation, even if it's just for that day, and you can see it, you know, and when you do it, don't have an agenda behind it. Don't make it a self-centered thing. Just do it, you know, and that person hopefully in turn will pay it forward. A lot of people say when you do something for someone, you know, you just tell them pay it forward. No, don't pay it. Don't tell them that. Just let them do that. You know what I mean? Let them feel that, you know. That's how I feel about it.
Well, there are a few different approaches here, which is what I find so interesting, where Jesse has filled with books with these drawings and the volume. So your first volume of drawings, all the news that fits into tiny, tiny hands, was that it?
Yeah.
And the new one, which is just out, is From Impeachment to Embleachment. Do you want to make a plug for your books so people can buy them all?
Yeah, there's 2 books. First, they basically cover, the first book is essentially the first 2 years. And then this one that just came out a couple of weeks ago is the second 2 years basically. So they're very, very similar in terms of length. I'm very happy with the new one. I was able to, I think one of the things I found from this project is that I really enjoy, I often enjoy the writing as much as the drawing. Sometimes I enjoy that more than the drawing itself. There's been a lot of times where periods of time I'll go and I'll do a series of posts that are mostly just my terrible handwriting as opposed to a drawing, because I think, you know, I've over time, I've really gone to really appreciate distilling something down to its essence, like a headline, for example. So just kind of cutting out the noise as much as possible, and sometimes text does that. And so the new book has, I was able to do some writing in that one, not a lot, but just like sort of chapter breaks. But yeah, covers all that stuff. And it was kind of funny going back and getting the drawings and everything together for that and realizing, holy shit, there's so much that's happened in these past years. I mean, we almost went to war with Iran. Remember that? I mean, there's so many things that are, I mean, it goes without saying, it's like, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but there's so many things that happened that would have been the main takeaway, the main cliff note from any other previous administration. But it's not a laugh riot. I can't say that. It's got laughs, it's got tears. It runs the emotional gamut.
So how are you all feeling about where we are in the last 4 days before the election? Yep. Yeah.
The 4 days is immaterial. I mean, because
Right.
no matter whatever happens, it's not like November 4th.
No,
You know, he evaporates. I think honestly, that's when everything will get, either way, whether he loses profoundly or by a small margin, or if he wins, either way, November 4th on, that's when everyone's got to buckle up, because it's hard to imagine or to comprehend it, but we haven't seen anything, like all bets are off. If he's a lame duck or if he's emboldened with the second term, either way, it's like a,
yeah, it's going to be a rocky road.
yeah, going to be a wild one.
Scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, corralling everybody into this show and having you all agree to actually let me show your work, and I feel like it all came together so beautifully. Like, just when Kath set up her teacups, it just brought the whole room together. I feel like we have the Tiny Pricks project on one wall, and Kath's work, and a whole wall of Dan's linotype occasionally, and all this incredible work from Jesse and Jacques. And it has made me feel a little better. It's just been such a rough road, and it was something that, while I know that we are in this blue bubble and it's sort of preaching to the converted, but having conversations with people here, and I really only experienced a couple times people who came in who were not ready to have a conversation, who just wanted, you know, to shout at me for a while. And I was here for it all. But I think overwhelmingly, people were kind of inspired, and, you know, at hopefully the end of this presidency, we still don't know, just for people to process this document of this time. People found it a little overwhelming, but also transforming so much negativity and hate and all of Trump's tweets and just artists to what's going on and where we are has been sort of profoundly uplifting to a lot of people. And I'm so grateful that you all let me do this.
Really grateful that I think the show is hung so beautifully, Margaret, and that is really credit to you, the way that you invited us all and it came together really well. And then I don't know if people know this, Margaret has basically single-handedly staffed the gallery the entire time. And I've been in there a couple of times and she kind of decided that this was her like personal voting information center. So I kept seeing these people coming in and she would say, well, are you interested in being a poll watcher? Are you like, she just kept like, she had all this information from the Secretary of State's office and you were so kind to so many people who maybe were, I remember one guy coming in who had never voted before and was kind of nervous about what it might be like. And you were so generous with your time with him. And it was so neat that because of this exhibit, he felt like he could come in there and then get into this conversation with you and maybe vote for the first time in his life. So anyway, I feel like that to me just added a whole other level to this, that you kind of set up shop as like this one woman voting concierge for downtown. It was great.
After getting displaced from my jobs, I needed a job. So yeah, it's a nice way to spend time. Any last thoughts? Besides telling everybody to vote in your own special ways.
Well, the only thing I'd just add to what Kath was saying about how nice and beautiful the show is, but it's also interesting because like Jacques I know is an artist and a printer, right? Kath I know is an activist and sometimes card peddler.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Jesse I know only from, your work, but hearing your talk, it sounds like you sort of came into this not necessarily from, hey, I'm a successful watercolorist, cartoonist. I don't know what your background is, but I feel like what I think is the show is so nicely hung that it's always interesting when something's being presented in such a clean art gallery type format, but the work it's not making you uncomfortable, it's making you kind of happy to see the things, not necessarily read the details. You don't want to read the stuff in that show, it's really depressing. You're just kidding, it's not at all, right? But I mean, but when you're asking, had your art been changed by this blah, 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 by the presence or whatever, this to me is like a really good example of, because of the location you're in, because the doors are just open, and then you being an open and generous person to talk to people, but the whole atmosphere is sort of like, okay, this is sort of a nice, this is the place I would want my artwork, if I'm gonna be making artwork, to be, because it's not, the artiness of it isn't depressing and turning people away. And I feel like that's an achievement to be able to put that together, but it's hung in such a way that it's still functioning in that world, which is always kind of interesting. So
Yeah.
What I like about the whole show is the different aesthetics, but the one thing I think is important, I'm hoping people got out of it, is that our thought process and all of that, what was put into it, and what we were trying to convey. I hope everyone felt like they can shoplift a little bit from each one of us, that they can take away.
Mhm.
I literally shoplift, because sometimes I go in there and there's some frames missing and I'm like, and it's right by the door, so it'd be pretty. And sometimes Margaret doesn't even know I've walked in. I think she doesn't. I don't know. Yeah.
You always make so much noise, Dan.
Yeah, it's really bad. Do you hear the noise my computer's making? Is this messing
No, I can't even hear it.
There's
I
something
hope-
making noise. It's really not important.
I love what Jacques just said, and I think I hope people do shoplift ideas. And I also hope, to me, it's also, people have to raise their voices, like we've got to get louder, and everybody's got a way, like, I don't know, why don't you sew your rage onto a Raggedy Ann doll, whatever, put it in a teacup, make a book, make a print, whatever, but we cannot, I so agree with Jesse, it's going to get harder. It's already been hard enough, but it's going to get harder, and we cannot not each find our way to say something, whatever that may be. Maybe that's privately, maybe that's, I don't know what, but I walked in there and felt hopeful because it was all these people saying whatever it is that's on their mind, that's resisting what's going on. So people got
I
to
feel
speak
like
up.
you can shoplift some attitude
Yeah.
and just go out in the world with all this ammo. I mean, I feel like each one of you has given me something, just the solidarity of it all too. That there are people who are fighting and trying to get through this and change this world has made me a little hopeful.
That process continues on, you know what I mean? Even after the election, you know
We're
what I mean?
not done. We're not done.
Not done, no matter what, we just have to keep our foot on that gas pedal, and not take it off and everything. Because as soon as we get quiet, we could become complicit, I think.
That's right.
Because I know I'm always gonna have something to say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm very glad that you've all found a way to say it, and
I'm gonna eat a lot of chocolate.
it's so good to see your work.
Thank you for putting this together, Margaret.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret.
Yes, thanks, Margaret. Thank you,
It's been
Craftland.
great.
Really cool.
Yay.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jacques. Kath Connolly. Take care, you all.
Okay.
Roma.
Bye, Roma.
Hi, Kath. Good job.
Thanks.
Sorry about
Good night,
the mess.
everybody. Thanks for tuning in too. It looked like, there were actually some people who listened to us. That was cool.
I paid some people out. No, just kidding.
I'm sure
Yeah,
you
No,
did.
Jesse,
I
thank
was
you.
handing out money on the street all
Just
day.
printing money all the time.
Never ends up well.
All right.
We're also gonna put this up somewhere
Ooh.
on the website, craftlandshop.com. Shameless plug.
Yay. Well,
Do you have
it was
any
lovely.
more signed copies of your book, Jesse?
What's that?
Do you have more signed copies of your book?
I
Or
think,
do you send them all out?
I think I've got a handful more I'm gonna be putting
That's
up
over.
for sale. I've got a couple more, I think. I'm pretty sure I do. I'm not good at this. I don't know.
It's, you're doing great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.
you.
Take
Good
care.
luck.
All right. Bye.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna go watch some cartoons.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye. Where's that?